Greetings, comrades. It's the 25th of September 2025. We are looking into the Zimbabwe news headlines. We start with our currency, the ZiG. It's trading at $13 per ZiG. Then on the black market, is trading at $33. $13 $0.80 to the US dollar, and on the black market it is $33. We look into the headlines. The first headlines: Zimbabwe faces economic decline of epic proportion, echoes of 2008 crisis. The next headline: Mnangagwa struggles to save crumbling ZiG, our currency. The next headline: extravagant Harare councillors' competence questioned as corruption and financial mismanagement ringing the opposition-led city. Next, the government unveils a strategy to address Zimbabwe's incessant power outages. Zim record useless blueprints and strategies since independence. None of them has worked. And then we proceed. Electoral disputes can be avoided, says ZEC chairperson Chigumba. 35 motorbikes exhibits vanish from police custody. Someone gave the police motorbikes to themselves. And next, Lithuania regime slammed for handing over Zimbabwean fire bridge trucks to Ukraine. Zambian president suspends judges who ruled in favor of rival. When I was reading the article, it's about the 3 judges that were suspended in Zambia. And then the next deadline speaks about the snowstorm in South Africa where 2 people lost their lives. The next says witnesses in Gweru killer businessman case disappear. And there's an opinion piece where someone says Mnangagwa has failed SADC with his UN General Assembly. Not sure that is Mbofana. As we said last time, let's look into 2 stories that we think we need to discuss. Zimbabwe faces economic decline of epic proportion, echoes of 2008 crisis. The article says, I quote, Zimbabwe is teetering on the edge of a severe economic downturn, evoking memories of the 2008 hyperinflation crisis that disseminated savings, crippled industries, and left the majority of the population in urgent poverty. Experts have sounded the alarm over the country's worsening financial instability, with inflationary pressures and foreign currency shortages continuing to batter an already fragile economy. We have said that ZANU-PF-led government has failed to organize production. We have a serious economic crisis. Those that were around in 2008, 2007, 2008, you remember that you couldn't buy anything from the shops. Groceries were not available in the shops. There were always long queues of fuel. We seem to be, according to this article, we seem to be going back to those days. There was a massive inflation, if I were to use this word. And when the bond coup happened in 2007, we thought reforms were going to be initiated, economic reforms. That did not happen. What alleviated the suffering in 2007, 2008 was that we went to, firstly, it was the diaspora that supported families with the groceries, particularly those that are in South Africa and Botswana that were sending groceries to their families. And of course, the inclusive government, which was inaugurated in February 2009. I remember, I think it was 2007, I was driving alone from Harare to Johannesburg. So I drove. When I got to Maswingo, it was after 10. So I saw Butter Shop, it was opened, and I wanted to buy some sandals. I stopped, I went inside the shop. It was open. So I talked to the salesperson. You see, shops, there were those boxes for shoes. So I speak to the salesperson. I said, look, I'm looking for something that says we've got nothing. And I was like, what are you selling? What is in this box? He said, there's nothing. So why are you opened? And they says, no, we are forced by government to open even though there's nothing. You can imagine that someone going to a retail shop will open the shop with nothing to sell, simple because government wanted the media to believe that there's no crisis. So indeed, we are getting into a crisis. Let me quote again here the crisis that we saw in 2007, 2008. He says, quote, the resurgence of fuel shortages has sparked fears that the country is headed for another hyperinflationary spiral. Prices for basic commodities such as bread, maize meal, and cooking oil have surged, with inflation now creeping back to levels not seen since the 2008 crisis. Many families are now struggling to afford even the most basic necessities, and the informal markets are beginning to flourish as citizens seek alternatives to overpriced goods in formal shops. Now, ZANU-PF, which is going next month to its annual conference, the main item on the agenda is that President Mnangagwa must be in office until 2030. There is no strategy to address the economic crisis that we are faced with as Zimbabweans. This is why it is important that we must organize ourselves into a political force, because ZANU-PF has failed to resolve the economic and the political crisis. And once again, as we are getting to month end, the diaspora is called once again to support families in Zimbabwe. We know that we are struggling in foreign lands, but they are looking up to us to send them groceries so that they survive. Otherwise, if we do not send them groceries, they will not have money to buy overpriced goods in the informal market. Let's discuss the last news headline. It's about the Electoral Commission chairperson who says electoral disputes can be avoided. She says, I quote, Zimbabwe or the article says, I quote, Zimbabwe Electoral Commission chairperson Justice Priscilla Chigumba says most electoral disputes in Zimbabwe can be avoided. She said the disputes witnessed during elections cycles can be avoided if political parties and stakeholders agree in advance to change laws or effect the desired reforms that govern elections. She's quoted here saying the differences we have as stakeholders on the electoral process in Zimbabwe are perpetuated by our failure to correctly diagnose the problems in order to prescribe effective solutions. It is at forums such as this at which stakeholders must exhaust deliberations on their expectations of how elections should be conducted. The purpose of this review workshop is therefore not to point fingers at one another, but to brainstorm and come out with proposals on how we should reform our processes so that they meet the expectations of the majority of stakeholders, she said. The problem in Zimbabwe is that the political climate itself does not allow for a free and fair elections. SADC has spoken about this, that the public media must be accessible to everyone. Those that were following elections in South Africa, SABC was giving airtime to all political parties. In Zimbabwe, when the opposition is seen on ZTV, it will be criticized. So you need the opposition to have access to the public broadcaster in Zimbabwe. You need the police to treat political parties with respect. We should not be refused to hold public meetings or rallies. When ZANU-PF does not even submit an application to the police for a clearance, they simply call the police to come and provide security, not to decide on whether ZANU-PF can have a rally or not. But us who are subjected into these harsh conditions where you make an application, you inform the police that you are going to have a public meeting. You are told that it is not possible. So the rigging of elections is not a one-day event. It is a process. And the first thing, which is beyond the chairperson of the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission, is that the state institutions must allow for free political activity in Zimbabwe. This is why that we are saying Zimbabwe Communist Party supporters must register in their millions to vote. And we are going to clarify in some videos later on what we mean when we talk of Zimbabwe Communist Party supporters. Remember that a communist party, by its very nature, it is a vanguard of the working class. It is not a mass movement. This is why we are saying, let us separate and they complement each other. Let's have members of the Communist Party. And we are going to clarify this in detail. Then have supporters, those that support the programs of the Zimbabwe Communist Party, who are not necessarily communist themselves. So we need to ensure that those that are in the diaspora, those that are in Zimbabwe, are registered to participate in the electoral process. But the police, the public media, and the other institutions must not make it difficult for opposition parties to carry out their political activities. We will, of course, later on look into international news headlines. Please like this video, subscribe to this YouTube channel. If you're on TikTok, please do follow us. Otherwise, have a great day. Goodbye.